if you're beginning to cast and you have the switch rod and you're struggling, rather than using the proper ratio of like a 10-foot tip, when I see somebody really, just struggling, I will put an 8-foot tip on them, and then miraculously that gets them a little more aggressive D-loop, and I won't even tell them I do it. And then all of a sudden now they have the right, line stick at the bottom of the D-loop, and then that just lets them pleasurably cast.
That was Jeff Liskay with a nice Spey casting tip if you struggle at all with Skagit. And let's be honest here, who doesn't struggle a little bit with Skagit and Spey? This is the Wet Fly Swing Fly Fishing Show.
Welcome to the Wet Fly Swing Fly Fishing Show, where you discover tips, tricks, and tools from the leading names in fly fishing today.
Hey, how's it going today? Thanks for stopping by the Fly Fishing Show. Please support this podcast by heading over to wetflyswing.com/members and joining the members group. This is a quick and easy way for about the price of a cup of coffee to get in the group and ask a few questions, dig a little deeper. And I've noted this previously, but Adam Curry's got this new Podcasting 2.0 value for value, and this is what we're going to be transitioning to with the members group, is finding a way, if there's any value that I'm providing you, if you can provide that through the members group, connecting there. So check it out and let me know if you have any questions. Before we get started, let's hear from our sponsor. Koffler Boats specialize in custom ordered aluminum boats and uses the best materials, components, and accessories available to meet all of your fishing and boating needs. The Jet Drifter, a perfect power boat for shallow water rivers or lakes, will perform with as little as a 35 horsepower prop engine. Head over to wetflyswing.com/Koffler to check out the lineup right now. That's Koffler, Koffler, wetflyswing.com/Koffler. Check out the lineup and connect with Joe. Jeff Liskay, one of the biggest names in Great Lakes Steelhead, is here to shed light on the switch rod. We find out why he uses a 16-inch leader, how he finds fish before nymph fishermen, and what really gets him fired up and is something he'd like to get rid of here this coming year. The G3, the 222, and a super rapid fire round. So without further ado, here is Jeff Liskay from GreatLakesFlyFishing.com. How's it going, Jeff?
Great, Dave. Thanks for the invite, man.
Yeah, thanks for coming on here. I always talk about this as I'm going down through the journey of some of the bigger names and people in the Steelhead game. And I think from the very beginning, your name has been out there, and I just haven't been able to connect with you until now. So I appreciate you spending the time today. How are things going?
They're going good, man. We're looking forward to our early start this fall again. Mother Nature seems a little cooler, but looking forward to another great season.
Yeah, is it starting? When does the season? And I actually just had. It's funny because I'm starting to get a little more familiar with some of the local rivers over there, and so for you, when does the season get going? When do you get fired up for, like, if we talk Steelhead?
Yeah, right. So usually, of course, now it's a happy thing. Now with the borders open to Canada, I usually go do my BC trip in September or so. And then as soon as I get back from that, say around the end of September, beginning of October, the Great Lakes migratory trout game starts firing up. And depending on what body of water you're fishing, for instance, where I'm at on the south shores of Erie, the farther east you go, the earlier the run starts. End of September, going into early October, it's starting to roll along pretty good. If you go to the western end of Lake Erie or southern Michigan, it's not quite fired up until, Halloween or so. So it all depends on your venue, north or south, and when things really get fired up.
Gotcha. So you just have to kind of be ready to see what, I guess what the rain is. Is it all dependent on kind of the weather and the temperatures, and is that the X factor?
Yeah, it is. It's funny is because Erie is all runoff type streams, and they're really affected by snow melt and precipitation. So if we have a dry fall, I find myself out stripping streamers out off the mouths of the creeks and the rivers, and until we get that nice flushing of water to bring up the water levels to some type of mean average, I'm out in the lake chasing them, which is great. Because, it's fun. You get to see them, nice streamer game. But the minute we get enough flows where the flows stay consistent, then we start, migrating towards the rivers. Michigan's are ground fed streams, so they hold their potential of, higher flows earlier. So it all depends on, precipitation, like you said.
Okay, so basically you're kind of in BC, and I guess, so BC, how you've been doing that for a few years?
I have been, not the last couple of years, of course, the borders, but that's always been, do the whole, visit friends, go do some couch surfing, spend 2, 3, 4 weeks up in BC. There's nothing like, the dry line, and that I do not have that game. I have a little bit of it in the Great Lakes, but there's nothing like a nice summer run steelhead.
Hey, would you say, I mean, that's the biggest difference between the Great Lakes steelhead and up there? I mean, obviously there's probably lots of differences, but just that, right? You got dry line versus down and dirty sort of thing, or getting down to the fish?
Yeah, absolutely. There's nothing like, just flowing a dry line all day, start out with a dry and then work your way into a wet fly, and you never really have to change your program. Once in a while, put a tip mount if it gets super gritty or something. But, we do have the opportunities for dry flies and some wet flies. It's just that whole time period that a summer run fish stays within its natal waters, and they get, they're sometimes 4 or 5 years in their home stream, like the Dean or something, and those fish get super grabby compared to Great Lakes. And then, I'll be honest, Dave, ours are not steelhead. I'm going to go on record. I'm probably one of the only Great Lakes guy that'll say that they're not steelhead, that, they're all migratory rainbows. So they're really great fish, but, maybe that's something to do with they're not so grabby too.
Right. That's it. Yeah. So they're migrating in from the lake, and they're, there isn't really a time. So by not grabby, you mean you've got to pretty much get that fly right in front of their face for them to eat it, or even slip it in there. Is that how it works?
That's like, I don't ever like to use the word force feed or slip it in their face. But, when the water temperature is cold, yeah, absolutely. You gotta, boggle it in there a little bit, but they will move for the fly. It's just the vertical movement. They'll come up for it. And, just when you think these fish won't do it, I'll have, 3 or 4 or 5 come to the dry fly in like one day. So it's all about picking the right water temperatures and the time of season. Early season, when the water temperatures are in that mid 50s, it's very potentially, great time to do it. And then again, late in the spring, is another great time to do it too.
There you go. Okay. And I'm just curious, it sounds like you choose the river based on, the conditions and things like that. And we're probably going to dig into a little bit on some of the stuff you do out of your boat. But I'm curious, are you doing an equal amount of, getting up into these rivers, the smaller water sort of stuff versus kind of the bigger, the mouths and into the lakes? Or what do you spend most of your time throughout the year?
I'll do spend the time early season. When the flows are down, I'll find myself out off the river mouths and stuff with the boat, stripping streamers. But my true passion, and the cool thing about, a swung fly presentation is that I can generally stay a day or 2 or 3 days ahead of the armada of indicator fishermen, because they need a little lower flows. They need that little bit more sight where, I can pile on a big giant, profile fly and get it out there and stay ahead and have a little bit of working room. Because most of the fish, when the water's a little higher on these runoff streams, they won't pile up into the, the community holes. They'll just stay out on the edges, and you just cover the water on some of the flats or the straights and stuff. And that seems to be my game of choice as the last, 5, 6 years or so.
Gotcha. So it is for you, it's a swinging game. You're not really talking nymphing at all. You're always focused on swinging.
If myself, I wouldn't put anything on but a dry line. But I do indicator fishing for clients. But I look at it as a skill set. A lot of times we'll use an indicator just to get that fish under their belt, or get a little, for me to evaluate their skill set. And then I'm always trying to get somebody pushed over to the more challenging and challenge themselves with trying to swing a fly for the day.
Exactly. Okay. So, and that's a great tip, is that if you can get out there a little bit earlier in the season or on those rivers and put something big on. I mean, are you what's your fly? What are you looking like? Let's talk a little bit about just the setup, just to get somebody queued up here. Could we think of I'm not sure. I know there's a bunch of rivers that you fish, but is there one that maybe we can think of as a focus, just to help guide the conversation a little bit? Maybe something that's not a secret out there.
Yeah, no, there is no secret of social media anymore.
There are no secrets.
It's like everybody's networking together. But just rule of thumb, if we're going to put the South Shores of Lake Erie on the map. If you look at it in general, if the eastern end of the lake, the smaller rivers clear faster, and then as you work towards the lower gradient rivers to the western end of Ohio, you've got the Huron, you've got the Vermilion, and even Rocky. Those rivers are running through flatter terrain, through farmlands, and they don't clear as quick as if you go all the way towards Erie, PA, and into New York a little bit, until you get to the Cattaraugus. And then at that point, it's a larger river, and it does stay silty really, a long time. So I usually start east, and work my way back west. And then right in the middle of this, they call it Steelhead Alley, but I like to call it Rainbow Trout Alley. But it's right in the middle. It's one of the larger rivers are the Grand River. And that's gives you a little more working room. It stays a little more gritty, but is a, classic ledgy swing water, sort of like the Clackamas or something. And then we have room to work between the community holes. There's a lot of bee water. And then, probably in the last 10 years, 12 years, I've been really concentrating on the Cuyahoga River, which has tons of, no private access. It's all public, national park. The numbers are way down, but it's a classic, big water, lots of room to swing a fly, and they're probably going to start stocking it, very soon. But the numbers are down, but we still get fish there.
Okay. So it sounds like, yeah, you do have a few of those bigger, and maybe we could focus a little bit on that. I guess talking swinging, but you're also swinging. I mean, that's, I guess, where the switch rod and things like that come in too, because you can swing in some of these small rivers as well.
I do. Yeah. So as everybody starts out, they start out with a little bigger outfit than needed. I settle into a nice switch rod that's a 5-weight. Of course, it's a Scott, but it doesn't really matter. But the grain weight is around 330 grains as once you perfect your casting and all your, everything that goes along with this whole journey of swinging a fly, is that right around 330 grains is a great grain weight that you can still get out some heavier tips, some bigger flies. But the fun thing about it is when you do connect with the fish, you're more connected with a smaller rod than you are your traditional 6 or 7 weight true two-hander over 12 foot.
What's the and what this is? So the 5-weight, and what length is this rod? Are we talking? This is kind of a switch rod.
Yeah, it is 11. It's about 11 foot, and I would always consider a switch rod something that I could grab with one hand and still cast it. That's under 350 grain to me. I can still grab it if I had to, and do a single hand Spey cast if I had to. And we still use a lot of traditional, 7-weight single hand 10 footers to swing flies too when the water drops down too. But my go-to is that 11 footer.
There's 11 footer good. So, and that's one where definitely, I mean, you could use in some of the smaller streams. And then even if, it's a little bit bigger water, do you use that one also if you're hitting some of the bigger water out there, or are you going to a bigger rod?
I did use a bigger rod, Dave, but, with today's modern, lines, what I'll do is I'll just drop on an intermediate Skagit head and use the same light tip, but then just use intermediate sink Skagit head, and I can get the flies down in that dirty, gritty water and still enjoy that nice light rod.
Perfect. And you're probably talking about like Scientific Angler. Is that the lines you're using?
I am. Yep. I'm I'm on the advisory team for them, and it's so cool to be involved with, them. And then, some of the other super fishy guys that are involved with the two-handed game. We feed off each other, but I learned quite a bit from them too. And our waters, and the one reason too, is that not only are they gritty because they're runoff rivers, is they also, the bulk of our fish are coming in when the water is like in the high 30s or mid 30s. So these fish are sometimes even that intermediate just slows that swing pace down just enough for them to, hitchhike onto the fly, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, that is the secret. So you got the water temperatures are the first thing, but then as far as presentation for the fish, it is speed. So you're trying to slow that thing down as much as possible. And is that the goal, and still swing it?
It is. It's a sight thing, because I play the rivers when they're on the drop, and I push the envelope of how gritty it can be. So like that 14, 18 inches of visibility with cold water, You got to park it marinated in their face just long enough. And then usually you can find for the course of the day, if you make the cast and make the swing, is just a second count of like, are they on like a 17-second swing type of water? Are they going to be on the the tanky stuff on the edges? But a lot of times, once I find that swing pace that they're in, on a count method, then I'll just zero in on those types of runs for the rest of the day.
There you go. And those runs are typically, like you said, you might be fishing the edges, maybe not the bucket, but I guess it depends, right? If you've got some higher, dirtier water. I mean, how do you do? So let's take it to the river. Let's just stay with that switch. I think it's interesting because we talk a little bit more about some of the bigger stuff. So you've got this kind of a shorter rod. When you go to, say, that medium size, maybe say medium, small size river or creek or whatever, I mean, how are you setting up for that? How are you reading the water? Where are you fishing? And what's that look like?
Yeah, so what's interesting about runoff rivers is that because they're spayed, is that they clear from the edges in and the particulates drop out on the edges. And then because they're shale, but predominantly shale bottom, is that these fish will pull sometimes as much as, a good 1/16 of a mile away from the classic community hole and use that B water in between the runs where if you were there on a normal flow day, it would literally be like you'd walk right by because you could see bottom, but you got to be a visionary to see that, oh, okay, we just put 2 foot of water on top of this. And a lot of times I'm swinging straight up flat shale with little nooks and crannies from the glaciers. And then, as we know, as it gets towards the end and starts parking on the edge on the dangle, that's usually where they're at, a rod and a half away. People have a tendency to when you first learn how to spay cast, they want to bomb it across to the far bank. Well, they're 60 feet too far generally.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
But I will say that you do need to make a little medium length cast. So to get it the setup, sort of like directing an airplane into a landing field, you gotta do all your manipulations to get that right speed, just to get it to park right there in that G spot, along the edge.
That's right. So now, and I think we'll dig in. This is interesting because I think it is, just trying to. We've talked a lot about steelhead, but trying to pick out some of these little kind of tips that might help somebody, and that's a good one. Is thinking of the edges. So I mean, when you're hooking up, are you fishing? I mean, give us a typical width of a medium kind of average size stream. How so? It sounds like you're casting 30 feet and under. That's all like the length you're casting.
No, so generally speaking, our rivers are probably around 80 feet wide or so. And there are places that are really narrow, and there's some creeks which I don't frequent, which are as wide as your, two truck widths. But what I usually like to do is when you have your Skagit head out, and this is even going for big water too, is that your running line, when your head is stripped into within your overhang, when that loop or running line equals your rod tip length, so if your rod's 11 foot, that's 22 foot of running line, that's basically the most you need to fish, plus you get the most control over the fly by manipulating the back of that head. So I generally, once I see somebody out there where, they're stripping in and that loop is way longer than the rod, we're pretty much over casting to that point. And if we have to, we'll go to the other side of the river and fish it from what I call everybody calls it Canadian side. So I really try to get that presentation better rather than worrying about the long cast. That's that's half the secret, is get that, how everybody, you just know when you're going to get that grab. And that just comes with manipulating that, the head itself.
Yeah, gotcha. So on some of these runs, when you come back year after year, I mean, are the same spots? Is the river staying kind of similar? Are you going back to the same spots year after year?
Is it a typical guide is like, oh, I got them there yesterday, I'm going to go back there tomorrow morning. But the problem is that we forget to take that note to the migratory fish, and they're on their way up or down. So first off, you got to, the water levels, they might be parking like in the elevator pools at the head of the pools, but generally speaking, we could have major changes because they're runoff rivers. You could have a big log jam in your way. But overall, they don't really fill in a whole lot. They fill in and they dig back out. But I will say that, whatever it was 15, 18 years ago when I really started swinging flies is that I found places that these fish will lay that I never would have ever threw an indicator. Because you're bank to bank fishing, and it's like, well, I'm just going to start right here and work my way right through this section, and I'm catching fish where normally I would have just either waded through or made like a half-hearted cast and got out of there. So I really learned a lot more swinging the flies. That is like a searching, power fishing type deal.
No, and I'm glad you mentioned the 15, 18 years ago. I want to, maybe we could kind of pause here and go back into the time machine a little bit. I'm curious, since you've been around, you're one of the most well-known people up there. Can you break down a little bit of the history there, like that transition into Spey, maybe what it was for you, and talk about, take us back to before, and I know we've talked a little bit about this on the show, but when did that happen? When did that Spey kind of revolution happen out there?
So, everything was, really serious gear fishing with indicator fishing. And the numbers of fish were just, absolutely, off the chart hatchery wise. But I met one of my mentors, Rick Warwood. He came into town. We both did a steelhead presentation for the Natural History Museum, and he was working on his two-hand certs, and that's over 20 some years ago. And then right after that, he said, "Hey, we're working on our stuff. Did you guys want to learn how to Spey cast?" I says, "I do, because I'm going out west and I'm single-hand casting, I'm dying." So I went up there with a group of guys up on the Grand River on the north shore of Lake Erie at Bean Park. And he had a gentleman, Neil Holding, who's I would have to credit all of my beginning knowledge and even what I know today. My grassroots came from him. He's up chasing Atlantic salmon. But those two, I started taking lessons from them, and then they started coming down here and cultivating their craft of casting, because they knew nothing about the fishing, more casters. And then Rick is now a professional band player, retired, but Neil he's came down for years and really helped us out here doing presentations and getting us those starting points of casting. And then we just took it, I took it from there about how to adjust what we need. And, out west, all those guys, and they forgot more than I know about swinging flies. So I sort of took their knowledge and adapted it to our area. And lo and behold, 20 some years ago, it's a thing around here now,
Yeah, I was, and I go way, we had, gosh, I guess it was quite a while back, but, Kevin Feenstra was another person who's probably, similarly known as you, and he was there early on and things like that. I mean, so it basically, you guys, so you got going on this, and I mean, so people started picking it up, and now as you look around, on the water, I mean, probably similar to anywhere, you're going to have a little bit of mix, but you see a lot more guys swinging flies, or is it still kind of a unique little subset?
No, it's so crazy, Dave. It's I can actually go down to any of the rivers, and there might be more anglers swinging a fly now. Especially the younger generation, I think is so cool, is because one good thing is that they weren't raised with the outdoors and the red and white bobber with the worm and catching fish like, myself. Their first engagement to fly fishing that's it. There was no conventional gear. So their expectations of catching a fish is not as high as, some of the older generations. Plus, they're highly educated and they love the challenge. So they just dove right in. It's super cool, man. It's just, I see a lot of young anglers, and I says, "Hey, you ever have an indicator rod?" "Nope, just got this one." It's awesome. So it's a pleasure to see it, actually.
I love it. Yeah, it's like the new generation coming through. We just had an episode from that went out, the Taco Flyco. He's out in California, this guy. And it's classic because, it's definitely different. I mean, this guy is bringing together tacos and fly fishing and skateboarding and stuff. And, I think he's got some flack along the way, but I've been hearing from listeners since the episode has gone out, and people are totally resonating with it. They're like, man, just like you're talking about, it's like the newer school, it's like people, they want something different, and they're interested in hearing cool people with a different perspective. So I think it's great. And you're seeing that out there in the Great Lakes as well.
Absolutely. More so than just, I want to catch a fish type deal.
Yeah, exactly. Nice. So, I mean, we obviously can dig in all day on the tips and tricks, and we will dig into it more. I wanted you made a note kind of off air before we got going on fish handling and conservation. Can you break us down? So if we got that fish coming in, say, you hook the fish, you got in, talk about how you safely release that fish.
Yeah. So the struggle with the guide is that we're dealing with, anglers that sometimes don't have the ability to, touch and feel fish on a regular basis. So, getting that, grip and grin shot, which is very critical for a lot of anglers, some not, but in general, we need to get that nice photo. So I've been using, a larger rubber net, of course, and then we get it in the net. And then we have a little school. We get it out in some current. We have a little school of talking about, like, all right, if you do this, it's going to get a little crazy. And then we show them how to unhook the fish properly. We get the rod, take the rod out of the pitcher for the pitcher. We don't have the rod on the shoulder like a parrot, But then at that point, we talk about when you go into the net for these fish. A lot of anglers will go right in there like you're going to grab it. And I was like, no, you got to be there, go in there slowly and let the fish adapt to you touching it. And then we do a trial run over the net. And then we'll lift it out of the water, and it's going to wiggle and shake and get them a little feel for how they get their hands locked on the fins. And you're not up under the stomach and like stuff like that to support it. And then after usually a couple times, I'll say, you're feeling comfortable. And then at that point in time, we'll go ahead, lift, and as soon as they lift it out of the net, we take the shot. And then as soon as we get the shot, they just drop it right back in the water for the release shot. So it's never really out of the water. And, I have the 2-foot rule. No fish comes in less than 2 foot of water where they don't be banging on the rocks. But I feel that once they feel that they don't have to have a state of urgency to really firmly grip a fish, and be more like a Zen and just approach it really relaxed, things go out a lot better than when you start squeezing things, as you know. And then they get crazy, and then of course the banana peel shooting out the hands goes.
Gotcha. Okay, yeah, no, that's good. That clarifies that. So, and so on the net, what is the rubber net? Is this one of those like typical style net? What are you using there?
Yeah, so I've tried the cradle. That's okay, but there's some conversations about it. Keeps the gills closed, but the larger the rubber net you can get, I'm using the largest one I can carrying around. It's just made by a custom net company out of Michigan. They all make them, but something with the rubber net so when you're in the water, they have a little room to work in the rubber net. And then of course there's no way I usually pinch most of my barbs down so we don't have to worry about the hooks getting stuck in the rubber either. So it's one of those deals where I think the rubber really helps to keep that fish rolling and getting tangled in other types of nets. I think that's a key factor too.
Perfect. Yeah. So in barbless too, you're pitching. That's a great tip. Do you find that, for barbless versus barb, it's better just to go barbless and you're not like losing many more fish?
If you're going to lose a fish, the barb's not going to help. It was some type of other industrial accident, like the line behind the back of the reel or popping a tippet or forgetting to let go of the handle. But as far as like being a fish on, even if they run at you and slackline you, they probably would have got off with a barb anyway. And then I don't have to worry about a hook in somebody's hand or their ear or their face. It's really easy to get it extracted from them too, especially swinging a fly, So I haven't had any problem, or most of the time I do it and the clients don't even know I'm doing it.
Do you have probably, I'm guessing, a mix of clients, both kind of beginners and skill level? The net, do you recommend, if somebody's out there, just have a net, or is there a way to do it without a net?
There is. So if you don't have a net, then, swinging a fly is the easiest way because you have a very, good, strong connection of 15-pound or 20-pound right to the fly. So I always recommend get yourself out in deep enough water and then slowly work it in. And then you're going to have that slack line. Once you get the fish closed, slack line between the reel and your grab handle, and then basically release about 15 foot of slack line. Let that slack line drop to your left hand or right hand, whatever your dominant. Now you've got the line in the hand, and slowly bring that fish up to you with, right up to that strong connection of tippet or leader, and then grab your pliers and unhook them and never really touch them. If you really want to touch them, then you could hold that strong tippet and slowly work your hand, underneath the tail, and then you have the nice grasp on that fish there. And they seem to be pretty calm until you get them out of the water. You try to, of course, put their belly against gravel. That's when usually people have an issue, is they try to make all this happen because they're so excited to catch a darn fish that they bring it into like 6 inches or a foot of water. Well, that fish is not going to be happy. And always look for a little bit of a chilled water, like a little couchy, slow or calm water where the fish are not going to have any advantage over you by, current pulling against them. So that would be that's how I do it without. Usually don't carry a net on my own ever. So
let's take a quick break for a word from our sponsor. Koffler Boats specialize in custom-ordered aluminum boats and uses the best materials, components, and accessories available to meet all of your fishing and boating needs. The Jet Drifter, a perfect power boat for shallow water rivers or lakes, will perform with as little as a 35 horsepower prop engine, but the whole design will also accept larger engines. In addition, the Jet Drifter is also designed to be rowed. The Jet Drifter can be custom built in 14-foot through 18-foot lengths, and I've been rowing Koffler drift boats for most of my life. I remember going down the river in my dad's Koffler boat when I was a kid, and since I have transitioned into the 17 by 54 drift boat, perfect for packing a ton of gear and still staying nimble. If you need a bulletproof boat that can literally sit outside all year long when not in use and take a beating, Koffler has the boat for you. Whether a jet drifter, drift boat, Rocky Mountain trout boat, or sled, Koffler has you covered. Head over to wetflyswing.com/Koffler to connect with Joe and the family today. That's Koffler, Koffler, right now. wetflyswing.com/Koffler. You support our podcast by clicking over through that link to connect with Joe. Please let Joe know you heard of the ad through the podcast when you connect, and check back with me to celebrate if you end up making a purchase. Okay, now back to the show. Okay, and as far as the catch and release and we're focused on Steelhead here, so most of these rivers are, can you describe that a little bit, because you've got, there is this interesting thing, because there's hatchery fish, there's wild, what do you have out there? How's all that look?
So, in and around the South Shores of Erie, it's 100% trout hatchery. But the Great Lakes in total is probably close to 50% wild fish. So, like if you're in Michigan, you're fishing for wild steelhead. So you have to be really careful of your practices. Here in, South Shores, it's 2 fish per angler when they're in the river. And there are guys that bonk them. And I have no problem with them bonking a fish. They're hatchery fish, and they're meant to be harvested. But, I would have to say over 90% of the fish are released still, which is nice. Maybe, high 80s, 90s, because, I'll catch quite a few fish that have been caught before, during like after a run, say 2 weeks. So there is a good practice of catch and release. In the summertime for the trollers out in the middle of the lake, they don't, but that's just, grazing the surface of the amount of fish that we have.
And you mentioned we're going to probably dig in if we have some time here on, maybe talking about the boats and the bigger water stuff. But before we get there, I just want to swing us back to that river. We were talking about fishing just to make sure we kind of covered that. So we're talking about maybe a medium-sized stream, maybe it's in the 80-foot range or whatever it is. You've got this switch rod, this 11-foot switch rod. We talked about, maybe you can talk about the line. Did you describe, what's the scientific angler? What is the one line? If somebody's going to go pick one up right now for that 11-foot, 300 grain line or whatever, what would you be going with?
It's a Spey Lite. It's basically a nice short Skagit head that, I think as a beginning two-handed caster doing, performance Skagit cast, that if it's very long with them, because I would have to say the major fault for most casters when they're beginning is they never really get up into the key position before they make the forward stroke. They're really low in the box. People always hear in the box. They don't realize that it's left or right of center. It's not up or down. So that's the key to a good cast and, have your tips. But I would have to say that, the Spey Lite, I like the integrated running line because in warmer water, I can strip the fly in and then I don't deal with the loop to loop as much. One trick I do use is I use shrink tubing. If I'm going to do a loop to loop system from my running line to the back of the Spey Lite head, I'm actually running a little bit of shrink tubing there just to make that transition nice and smooth. Because, a lot of times if you're working under trees, which we do work to a lot, some of my best fishing spots, no one likes to fish, but you really can't get the whole head out because you'll be taking the top of your rod out. So we're casting probably a third of the head in the rod just to be able to make that nice little D loop and just punch it out there with some type of body English, because the trees are just so tight. Same with the OP too. So you don't necessarily have to have huge overhang just to make a good fishing cast. But, and then I always recommend that, if you got a short rod, like 11 footer, use a 10-foot tips on it. I'm using, the TC tips. They're multi-density. And in my area, my go-to is still the, Sink 2, Sink 4 for average conditions. And then when the water bumps up a little higher, I use a 3.5. And then the time I have to use a Type 6 sink tip, I will at that point probably consider dropping on an intermediate head just so I don't have to fight that heavy, that heavier, sinking tip. Another little tip too is if you're beginning to cast and you have the switch rod and you're struggling, rather than using the proper ratio of like a 10-foot tip, when I see somebody really, just struggling, I will put an 8-foot tip on them. And then miraculously that gets them a little more aggressive D loop. And I won't even tell them I do it. And then all of a sudden now they have the right, line stick at the bottom of the D loop. And then that just lets them pleasurably cast. And it shortens up their ratio from like that 2.5, length of rod to like 2. And then it's like golden for them. So
that's an awesome tip. Yeah, that's always we've talked about that a lot. We've tried to dig into lines, and sometimes it's confusing, sometimes it's not. So I love that you keep it straightforward. And yeah, we're talking about a shorter rod, so that's the 2.5 or whatever, and this is 11-foot rod. And just going back to that tip you mentioned before on the length. So you talked about if it's 11-foot rod, don't have any more than 22 feet. Was that your swinging length? Is that what you were describing there?
No. So if you have an 11-foot rod, about 22 feet, and I can even go shorter because most people, like I say, have a tendency to keep their dominant casting hand down like at shoulder height and never really up by their ear, to do that classic, come down with the hatchet cast. But so I find myself running shorter with them. And then as I have some customers, I can lengthen that length up a little bit, and put on like, say, once in a while, I'll put on a 12-foot tip with a longer rod, but very rarely. Very rarely.
So that gets us there. So we've got our rod, our line, and maybe just to kind of wrap this up quickly on the leader. Is this pretty standard for you? Or what's your leader look like if you've got this setup we're talking about?
Yep. So I usually run a butt section of, I would say 25, and then, or 20 depending. But if I do 25, I step it down to 20 pound, and I'm using the absolute leader material from SA. And I do use fluorocarbon. And I look at the diameters too, and that'll be like my gritty water conditions. And then, if the water clears up a little bit and I want a little more motion on the fly, I'll do 20 pound butt section down to 16 pound, for the stepping it down, about a 1 foot butt section. And I'm the firm believer, that I want my fly extremely close to my tip. I want to have super good control of my fly. In cold water and gritty water, these fish they can't move for the fly. So if my tip's down in their wheelhouse and my fly's up there swimming around like I would be fishing for summer run fish, more than likely you're going to get a mafia pluck, and then it's going to be out of their wheelhouse and they can't get it. So I like to keep it, super short, 14 inches, maybe 18 inches. 2 foot would be like my longer for my rivers. And then as it gets warmer and clearer, then I'll lengthen that up to your standard, 2 feet or plus.
Okay. And the the mafia pluck, describe that because I've missed that one.
The mafia pluck means that, the fish are in position where they are, and the water's probably say 14, 18 inches, and the water temperature is 34, and yet the swing speed's right, and you found where they're living, and it's coming through there. They see it, they try to get it, and they make a half-hearted little drive-by pluck, but then it pulls away from them too fast, or they lose it in sight because the length between the sink tip and the fly is a little long, and it just wants to like move and progress around a little bit too much. Where if you got it on a short dog leash, you can, like you called it before, you sort of almost like feed it right in there, really direct transmission right to the fish.
So that's a short, and the leader literally from your fly line, from your tip down to your fly, how long is that typically?
So it's going to be about 14, 18 inches, but closer to 14 or 16, really, really short. Especially if you're fishing wood, I can get right up tight to wood and fishing structure really tight. If I get a little longer leader on that thing, then it gets a lot of snags in there too.
Okay, and so the butt section typically you said clear water. Well, let's take the normal, maybe not clear, just normal. You're going to have a 1 foot section of 25 pound. Is that what you said?
Yeah. So basically, would be the 1 foot section would be the 20 pound, and about a 6-inch butt section up there. So it's reversed. So somewhere about that 6 inches of butt, and then the 1 foot of step down.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay, yeah. So this is an ultra super. You're literally, if you could stick the fly onto your, as close as you can get, like you said, this is super tight.
It is, and I open that dog leash up a lot too. But in general, they're seeing the fly first if you're doing everything right, and we have a lot of ledges. So like you're literally talking going from say 3 feet to 4 feet within one step. And it has to drop off that ledge right in those glacier grooves. And if it doesn't drop off, you're just gonna skim right over top of them. So, a lot of times, you're gonna step into it. So if you got a short leader and you feel that thing starting to like get in the sweet spot, you just take a couple steps right towards them, and that thing with that short leader will park right down on that ledge, free fall down in there, and that's usually when you get the grab.
That's amazing. Yeah, I love that. That's seriously I'm not sure we've dug into that. Anybody that has talked about such a short leader, so that's a killer tip there. And then what about so flies? Talk a little bit about. I'm not sure, if you're using stuff that's got a name or if it's just some random stuff. What do you? Can you throw out some stuff we might be able to kind of look up online?
Yeah. So if you just basically look at like we mentioned Kevin Feenstra is probably the most innovative, simple fly tie there is, and all of his patterns are super simple. But it is in my geographic area, it's all about, being able to see it in dirty water. So, that ice dub head or Senyo laser dub heads are pretty critical in my fishing day to day, only because I have the contrast of the two colored of the heads. And I usually stick with the chartreuses and the pinks and the oranges, because I'm fishing off colored water, and you play around with the sizes of them. And then after that, I've tried rabbit, I've tried everything else, but I tie a fly called the triple tail, and that was nothing more than an ice dub head, some flash, but all those slopping tips that I always clipped off when I'm tying, I have piles of them, and so I ended up just using those nice tips. They're about 3 inches long or so, and I use those, and I put 3 of those on the back, and I'll incorporate a few little rubber legs with an ice dub head. Is about a very short 2-minute tie, and I can fish super aggressive with flies like that. I can lose them because you're going to lose flies in my geographic area. And then so the key to that short leader too, Dave, is that I'm not fishing weighted flies. There are times I do, but I'm fishing that nice neutral buoyant fly that if my tip happens to park or touch, all I got to do is just raise the rod or take a little bit, step back, put it back under tension. And then that nice, easy casting fly that has a lot of movement is the go-to.
And so basically, yeah, your line's doing the work for you. So it's getting down there and your fly is sinking, but it might even be kind of float. So it's not literally on the bottom. It's kind of just above the fish.
Yeah, about 9 inches or so, and these trout are super stale sometimes in that cold water. So you got to put it in their wheelhouse. They won't come up vertically.
And as it's come down, so are you like spotting them and that sort of thing? How's that look? Are you just finding the fish just reading the water?
So most of the time when I'm swinging, I am the water is so gritty you couldn't see them. But there are times though when we have a drought period where all the rivers are down super low and you have unlimited visibility and I can see them. And then the first thing out of the gate is going to be a dry fly swinging them. That's going to be a mandatory, because that's the key to catching the fish on a dry fly is they've got to be able to see it from their position to the surface, regardless of where I've ever been. It's just like they got to see it. So when I get that 3, 4, 5, 6 foot visibility, the first thing I do if that water temperature is over 42 is I'm going to let somebody, we're going to throw a dry fly first and then see if we get one to come up. And then we're going to just slowly work our way down into with an intermediate tip.
So by dry fly, you're actually talking about like a skater or just like a wet fly?
Yep. So I'm actually talking about a skater. So I've had very little success with, I do catch a few on like foam, but I would have to say my go-to would be when it gets that clear would be a number 10 black muddler with the wings clipped off, and just, basically let it skate, little bit of dead drift skate, and just see if I can get a player. You can see their eyeballs, they look up at it. And then when it breaks out of the peripheral vision, you're going to see them pull off. If there's a couple of them, you might see one pull off and give it the, oh, okay, what's that type deal. But that's usually my go-to. And I'll fish that in white, with orange thread. But a lot of times it's that at the very end or something, just those few little twitch, not quite a aggressive scopper, but just a nice little, hey, we're still around, give them a little twitch. But one last tip would be is that a lot of times in BC, we'll do like a moose turd and we'll riffle hitch that thing like a third of the way down the body. So if the fish are super not aggressive and you see some follows, if you riffle hitch that like a third of the way down the body, when it comes down on the dangle, it has a tendency to do that little waggle, and you can park it and then manipulate your line left inward to the river, outward to the river, and that thing will just keep dancing downstream of you, and it sometimes drives them crazy just because it's not going to progress to the bank. So does that little Hawaiian bob dance there at the very end.
Yeah, there you go. I'd like to see that on a video. Do you have any videos out there of any of this stuff, or is that something I'm not sure what you're doing there?
No, I'm just starting to get into it, Dave. I mean, I could barely touch my cell phone, but as we talked, I'm starting to get into social media, and I'm the rage angler. I just love fishing, man. That's what I do. But now I find it's very important to do all these things too.
That's right. We need to find you like a social media manager, somebody to take over your stuff. So I did want to note Todd Hirano. He's out here. He's this extreme. The only thing he does is winter fishing on the surface. So he's chasing. So I'll put a link. He's got a pretty good resource if you want to learn. For anybody that's listening, want to dig in. He's pretty much. Oh, there's a few guys out here, but that's all he does. So I love it, though. This is awesome. Even out there in your neck of the woods where you probably don't hear much about dry fly fishing, you're giving it a shot just when the conditions are right. Yeah,
I met Todd, probably 8 years ago. Him and Tony, they were up on the Maurice in BC. And then, Todd's flies. And then, Tony showed me the floral fiber, little bit of a tip with putting floral fiber on the tails of for these fish to give them like a little bullseye. But that's what I said. Most of those Todd and those guys, they forgot more about swinging flies than I'll ever know. And then, casting wise and all these mentors I have from the West Coast, I greatly appreciate all the schooling they've gave me over the years, man. So it's so cool.
I know it's a lifelong thing. I know it's the casting and the Spey and It's like, yeah, whatever level you want to take it to the extreme level. When you look at you're obviously a huge name. Most people probably have heard of you. What is your specialty? If you talk about it, like what do you think is the thing you do best or you're most known for?
I think I think one of my good skill sets is you could drop me off in any river and you give me a day or two, and I can usually, with a two-handed rod, usually figure out that A, there's no fish in the system, or B, this is the game, man. Like they're up in the top of the elevator pools and they're on the run. Or, hey, no, they're all sulky. There's very few fish. They're static. They're stale. And they're sitting sitting in the back ends. And I got to like surgically remove these fish back there type stuff. But that's usually one of my good ones. And I'm really good at never fishing the same water twice, even if I catch fish. I love to see what's around the next corner.
Yeah, so you're exploring. So that's probably a good tip too. Is just that, like we said, don't get stuck on one pool, but pretty much you're out there exploring and covering water. Yeah,
I very rarely, if me and you did a float, regardless of where we're at, and we had a great day, it's probably 95% to 100% that we wouldn't do that same float again. Unless somebody bent my arm, I would say, well, what's over that way? Let's learn about this section of river that I've never seen. It's so cool. That's that exploratory part of me.
Well, let's talk a little bit about that just here on the boats and things. So, I guess I was kind of focusing, on, you're walking and wading and some of these areas, there's probably different levels of like the combat fishing where elbow to elbow. And then you got some of these places where you can get away from people, but you're also doing some boat. Talk about what boat, where you're fishing using a boat. Are people out there with drift boats? Is this out in the lakes? So what's that look like?
So I, other than one or two other anglers, I operate, a 22-foot multi-species boats on the Great Lakes. Stripping streamers and sinking lines and floating lines on Lake Erie and Lake St. Clair, chasing muskies. We're chasing, bowfin, carp, smallmouth bass, largemouth bass, northern pike. There's days that, people don't realize that, for the last, 40 some years, I've been chasing these fish out there, and it's hard to find clientele because it's like saltwater fishing, Dave. It's super tough, but I'm fishing the Canadian borders open, so I'm like super stoked to get over and fish Pelee Island on the west end of Lake Erie and fishing 17 miles offshore on a reef that comes up to 5 feet that's never seen fly. Never seen a fly. Like these fish I'm fishing for have never seen flies. And in St. Clair, the better muskie fishing is up on the Canadian side this time of year. So super stoked that we're getting to finally go over there and get a little, whack at some of the better fishing now, man. But I think it's a great adventure and a learning platform for majority anglers on the Great Lakes. If they're not a saltwater destination angler, they're pretty much cack-handed by not learning how to cast into the wind and learning about sinking lines and big flies and oval casts and all that stuff necessary to make you a well-rounded angler. So it's usually, when I take somebody out on the boat, it's usually an experience the first time. And by the end of the day, we put our tails between our legs and we get a few fish. But then the next time out, they got the game. They're like, all right, I practiced, let's go do this. Just like saltwater fishing. So it's pretty cool, though.
And I want to note, Russ Maddin was actually on recently. We talked about he really gets excited for the Chinook. I think he was talking about the same thing out there stripping and in the boats. Is that something Steelhead and salmon? Are you chasing those in your bigger boat as well?
So they get down on the thermocline at my part of the lake. So we, like I said, we have an opportunity all the way up until about first week of June. But mainly I call it Mother's Day. And then after Mother's Day, they start progressing offshore. And then they usually don't come back inshore until that second week of September, third week of September when they start. And then I got to be careful because they're out of temperature. So I usually, I don't want to bring them into water that's, high 60s, low 70s. So I have to be careful, about how I bring them in or where I'm fishing for them at that time of year too.
So, yeah, and I'm just kind of thinking back to, just a few of the guests that we've had over the years that have focused on this. And I think the interesting thing is that we were talking about a little bit the kind of the smaller game, we focus on today. If you've broke out a bunch of good tips here. Before we kind of leave this, anything else you want to give a shout out to as far as other resources and things like that where somebody might dig in? I mean, if somebody was, again, going out there and they wanted to take our conversation further, where would you send them?
I think as far as research goes, I think you can't do any better than your local fly shop. But the main thing is you have to segregate your fishing from your casting skills. So many anglers go out and they try to do both at the same time, and the human brain just doesn't work that way. My recommendation is to go take a casting lesson from your local pro or go to a Spey clave. I can't wait to go do Spey-orama again. I can't wait to go to Michigan Spey clave. And the amount of knowledge and the grace of a two-handed industry of like teaching beginners, it beats catching 100 fish in one day, because you're going to like perfect your skill that's needed to go catch a fish. So that would be my final say goodbye tip. Cast first, fish later.
Cast first, yeah. And the casting is a lifelong thing, right? When you think of your Spey cast, how do you feel about it? Do you feel like you're feeling pretty good, or do you got a long way to go?
Oh, so you go to Spey-orama, or when I see Travis Johnson and I hang out with him and he grabs a 15-footer by the butt, two of them, and casts them at the same time, I realize I'm still a turd compared to those guys out there. But, I can cast a Skagit line to get me going, but I still have a long way to go to really perfect my skill. That's what's so cool about it.
Nice, Jeff. Well, we're about there. I just want to we got a new segment here I've been doing occasionally, the G3. This is our own G3, but this is kind of, and the three Gs, I guess starting this off is, when you think about your career, you've been doing this a while. What do you, when you look back, what are you most grateful for? If you think of one thing, does anything come to mind there?
I think the first thing would be the people that have supported me, from families, and that they have suffered, to put my career where it's at and just spend so many days on the water. I like to always thank the people that have said, hey, he loves this, just let him go do it. And then I think all the mentors that were so gracious to spend time with me from the West Coast and up in Canada and even around my area, the Great Lakes, that just share their knowledge and, without even asking anything for it. It's a big community. I think that's my, I love to just say thanks to everybody that's helped me out, man. Greatly appreciate it.
That's amazing. Yeah. And you're still, sounds like, connecting the BC. Who's the BC when you go over there? Do you have a shop or a person or a group that you connect with there? Or, and you're fishing like the Skeena system?
I do. I go a little bit all over. I started out just going up there and going to Oscars and then meeting April Vokey. I know her really well. So, we used her place as a base camp, and then basically just did some couch surfing and rented a car and just brought my Watermaster with me and just started floating around everywhere. And then now I'm working with Ken Morrish a little bit, and I'm hosting a spring skiing trip with him, which is cool. I love the spring fishing. And then hopefully get back there again this fall here. I go to Alaska every fall now, but still hoping to get back there this fall, as long as everything's going to go smoothly here in the next couple, 3-4 weeks.
That's right. Yeah, Alaska, you could probably count on it, but I guess the COVID thing still, Canada you never know where that might go, right?
I think it's a week by week right now.
Yeah, I know. We're actually in the, where we're at there already, like we're going back now. They're talking about, again, I guess we've kind of been off and on, shutting things down and opening them up. But yeah, we'll keep our fingers crossed that we can all get back into the normal thing. So, well, let's just finish this up. So the second G of that G3 is, giving back. What would what's occurred recently that you kind of would like to forget about? Something that, what I mean, is just kind of maybe annoying, maybe something you don't get excited about. Anything come to mind?
I think the way that how the Division of Wildlife have, I've seen the populations of native fish species drop dramatically. And I really have a problem when the Division of Wildlife, they don't fix it until the wheel falls completely off. And then it's like they say, oh, there's a wheel. And then it's like 2-3 years later, it's like, oh, that's our wheel. And by that time, it's too goddamn late, Dave. And the next thing you know, we're in this state of recovery mode that we can never really, recover from. Yeah, I get on my soapbox. I get really PO'd about just like, hey, let's look in the future and just say, hey, this is a problem. If it closes the season down, so be it. Close it down. Whatever you got to do. Stop tournament fishing. Do something. But geez, that's where I get a little prickly about that stuff.
Gotcha. Is steelhead one of those species, or do you guys feel like steelhead runs are pretty healthy up there?
It's all trout and it's all hatchery, and I'm not really concerned about that. It's the smallmouth bass populations that are out in the lake. It's the native river smallmouth bass populations that are no longer there. It's just these little bullet points of the disrespect from that some anglers give the freshwater drum. That's one of my favorite species. We're going to start really pushing them hard because they're they respect the drum. Just because they're really plentiful and they hit the chicken feathers good, but just little things just to educate people to like, hey, let's fish smart and be smart about our future.
There you go. Yeah, we might have to get you on later for the talk about a drum episode, freshwater drum. That sounds pretty cool. We'll leave that for the next one. Then to wrap this up, just looking out as far as a goal or something you're looking forward to, anything come to mind there in the next, say, year or beyond?
Besides really fine-tuning my business and understanding, the connection with all the social media, is that I'm really working hard to try to pass the torch on to the younger generation guides and anglers to say, like, hey, I've been up this road and I've did more damage to fish and fisheries than any of you. And you might not want to do it that way because that's one good thing about being older is that I've screwed a lot of things up, and I just try to say, hey, check this out. I don't really bash them. I just say, hey, check it out. Make your own opinion. And I think it's working.
There you go. Do you see yourself, with the fishing and the guiding, just kind of like guiding forever, or do you have a plan to maybe get out of it and retire or something like that? Or what's your take on that? I know because there's different people that talk about a plan of guiding where they see an end in sight.
I will, as long as I'm physically capable, because I don't do it for the money. I really enjoy fishing with other anglers. So I'm going to guide until I'm, I don't know, I'm 60 now. I'm going to hope to guide till I'm 70 or more. But I think the main thing is that I'm going to guide less and steer more towards conservation, Dave. I think as I become that aging angler, we all go through that vicious cycle of catch 'em all, learn how to fly fish, and then eventually we got to protect what we screwed up. So that's where I see myself as being a rage angler. It's super hard to be a conservationist at the same time. It's like that fine line, but I'm going to slowly but surely work more towards the activism and, that conservation more than I am fishing. That's my goal.
There you go. And who is there one group that sticks out, the conservation group up in your neck of the woods that people could maybe look into, get behind?
Yeah. So we have Western Reserve, Reserve Conservation Group. They protect a lot of waters. The Metro Park systems do a really good job of protecting, the corridors. Natural History Museum, the Trout Club there. It's a small group, but they have their hearts are in the right place there too. As far as looking at future studies and stuff like that. But those are the key bullet points now. And you can always go to, Great Lakes Alliance and stuff like that because there's just so many of them. You just pick your battle of one, and then just stick with that battle till you get some traction,
That's amazing. I think those are all big groups that I'll put links out to as many of those as I can. And cool, Jeff. Well, I think that's all I have for you. I think we feel like we've filled a good chunk of time here. How are you feeling about this? I mean, you've done this so many times. Do you ever feel like something new comes out? I mean, today, was there anything new that came out today, or is this kind of the same stuff you've talked about hundreds of times?
Not, Dave, I like how you have a little more well-rounded through everything, through the conservation, to everything. I think that was really a great podcast. I greatly appreciate you on invite again, my man. Hope we can do something different.
Sounds good. I'll send everybody out to GreatLakesFlyFishing.com. And yeah, man, until we meet again, I'll definitely keep in touch with you on social. Are you, I guess, Instagram, is that the best place on social where you're most active?
Yeah, I guess so. Yep. I got a whopping, I don't know how many followers, but yeah, Great Lakes Dude. That's where they can find me.
All right. Thanks, Jeff. We'll talk to you soon.
You too, Dave. Thanks.
So there you go. If you want to find all these show notes, all the links, everything else we covered today, including some of the lines and the stuff Jeff talked about, you can head over to wetflyswing.com/255. 255 will get you to the show notes where we have easy to click links. If you get a chance, please subscribe before you get out of here if you haven't already and been enjoying this episode or the podcast. Go to your app, click subscribe, and if you also go over to wetflyswing.com/subscribe, that'll be an easy way to click over and subscribe on your app. You can also join our newsletter, wetflyswing.com. Head over there and in the sidebar, just join that newsletter. I usually send out an email every week or two sometimes, just with an update of our podcasts that we've had going. Podcasting. How are we doing right now? I think we are still doing 2 a week, which has been, it seemed like it was epic for a while. I think we may even be moving to 3 a week. If you'd like to hear one more episode a week from this show, send me an email, dave@wetflyswing.com. Let me know what you think, what day you would like it. Would you like it on a Monday, a Wednesday, a Friday, a Saturday? Probably maybe doesn't matter to you, but those are some of the little things I need to figure out before we get there. So I want to thank our new editor, Domingo. Dom, thanks for doing this. I want to give a shout out to you. This is, I'm recording this, getting things set up so you can take over and clean this thing up. And excited to, this is going to help us elevate the podcast. So, but I want to thank you again for listening today, and looking forward to catching up with you on the next episode, and hope to maybe catch you online or on the river.
Thanks for listening to the Wet Fly Swing Fly Fishing Show. For notes and links from this episode, visit wetflyswing.com.